Good afternoon. This is Tom Wyzowski with my fourth and final lecture on executing innovation initiatives. By now, you should have taken your first shot at answering questions 5 and 6 of the Dunkin' Donuts case study. I understand that there's some confusion about answering those questions, so I developed a rubric for questions 5 and 6, and I will put that on course documents, and I will have Jeff Campbell send it out via email as well. Just a note, course documents unfortunately somehow got blocked. So again, Jeff Campbell is working on that so they get unblocked. There are some documents in there that you will need to wrap up questions 5 and 6 and to answer question 7. We apologize for that. Not sure how that happened. So, again, we are in HTM 680 leading innovation. My 4 lectures, as you know, are on executing innovation initiatives. Just to quickly review, we have been talking about 3 critical components of executing innovation initiatives. Thinking strategically throughout your execution, focusing sharply against your centers of gravity or your greatest leverage points. And then today's lecture will be about moving quickly as you begin to take on and attack all those leverage points. 4 components of moving quickly that we'll discuss. First is measurement of ultimate success and having a good measurement system in place so you and the entire team, whether it's a team of 4 or 40, can see progress against your ultimate success measurements. Secondly, continuing our work using the open and online planning technique and communicating to the entire team using that technique and continuing to involve them and gain insight and ideas from them as you move through execution. Thirdly, resourcing to win. Once you have these leverage points or centers of gravity identified, that you must resource to win to move quickly against all leverage points in a very narrow time frame. And finally, being adaptive. Planning, resourcing, and repeating that process of planning or resourcing until you have achieved success. First, moving quickly. You've seen this chart multiple times. There's a reason you've seen it multiple times, because it is that important to leading innovation and executing innovation initiatives. You have to move fast. Time is your enemy. Why? Because of all the reasons outlined on this great chart: internal opposition, external opposition, competition, money getting diverted to other initiatives, the business environment changing, etc. And we've also talked about how the system resists change. The status quo has many champions. It's more comfortable, it's less energy, it's less anxiety, it's less work to stay in the status quo. I promise you, your change that you're leading against will be resisted by almost every center of gravity. The key is, over time, you must overcome that resistance, that opposition, using the tools and techniques we've talked about in these 4 lectures. So, Now you're ready to move into the field, into the business, and you're getting ready to make the change that the innovative change that you've been leading against. Measurement of ultimate success is critically important. Measuring activity is a waste of time. Never confuse activity with results. A fundamental leadership principle across business, but also across leading innovation. There's no brownie points for being busy, working 100-hour weeks, and killing yourself. If you don't get results, the activity must change. But results are what must be measured. You must understand the difference between measuring activity and measuring results, and you must always measure results. And never confuse tactical success with strategic success. So let's go back to our strategic objective of revolutionizing guest service in a hotel setting. What's our ultimate success measures? Is it cleaner rooms, quicker check-in, gorgeous food plating? It may be that, but how will we know when we are ultimately successful with our guest service initiative in our hotel? First of all, overall guest satisfaction will improve. I'd highly recommend measuring that. Second, that will lead to increased occupancy. I would highly recommend measuring that. Thirdly, that will lead to increased sales. And finally, that should lead to increased profitability. Now, that balanced set of strategic measures will allow you to ultimately know whether your initiative is having the impact you're looking for. So we'd measure guest satisfaction, we'd measure occupancy, we'd measure sales, and we'd measure profitability, or at least gross profitability. And that way, you would know that you're not just having tactical success, which a cleaner room via a checklist or an inspection would tell you, or quicker check-in by measuring how long it took for a guest to check in, or gorgeous food plating as measured by how many plates go out against the spec that's been established, for example. All of those are interesting and potentially important in the departments they're in, but overall, you as the leader of the initiative must know that guest satisfaction overall is improving, that occupancy overall is improving, that sales overall is improving, and ultimately profitability is improving. You can give away rooms, increase sales, and lead to reduced profitability. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking to drive the guest experience here so that overall sales and profitability grow. Continue our discussion about measurement. Here's an example. Dell initially focused, when the founder Michael Dell started the company, initially focused on sales almost solely. He was obsessed with growth. And he realized, though, that growth was not happening in a profitable way and his cash flow was being drained. Then he evolved to a more balanced success scorecard that included liquidity, cash flow, profitability, and growth. Then the measurement systems gave him, his salespeople, real-time feedback on these measures, on these metrics. So when they sold a deal, if they sold $1 million, they knew immediately, if they sold $1 million deal, what percent profit that deal had. So they got real-time feedback not only on the sales dollars they did, but also on the profitability of those sales. Another case, a restaurant chain that I'm familiar with was focused on profitability and set up manager bonuses accordingly. They got increased profitability at the cost of declining sales, as managers reduced labor and skimped on food portions. The chain was then acquired by a friend of mine. They implemented bonuses based on sales growth versus market competitors, balanced that with profitability as a part of the bonus formula, and overall profitability increased tenfold in 18 months. So this idea of measuring ultimate success is critical for whenever you're leading an innovation initiative. Here's a restaurant chain example where you could have, if you were looking at the entire chain, say you had a 100-restaurant chain, you were looking at the entire chain, you could look at the stock price, or if it wasn't public, an objective valuation of the business. And you could look at employee compensation. You could see that as a slice in time, and also trends over time to see if you're improving or not. For the market, you could see the share of sales in the target market you're trying to serve, whether that's fast casual or quick serve or even quick serve pizza. Whatever market you're trying to attack, you could see the share of sales that you had and the share of transactions even that you had. General business metrics could include gross margins of core products. To measure innovation, you could set a target that every year 15% of sales from products would come from products introduced in the past 3 years. That would tell you that innovation is actually occurring, that new products are actually driving the business. In terms of people and culture, you could do an employee engagement survey and see the level of employee engagement and set a percentage of fully engaged employees that you were targeting. And finally, productivity. You could look at profit per employee or profit per sales dollar, etc., to see if you are actually generating more profit per resource utilized. So that's a broader, more strategic example of an entire business, or you could go into a more narrow example as we talked about earlier. Okay, now we have our measures of success. So you think of the Dunkin' Donuts case study, we'd want to make sure that we set up our measures of success there for the answers to question 7 and incorporate this concept into your answer to question 7 of the Dunkin' Donuts case study. Next, I'm going to touch on open planning and constant communication one more time. This is a bit of a review from an earlier lecture, but it's really an important principle. Open and online planning and constant communication. These meetings that we described earlier, they speed execution significantly. Now we've decided what our centers of gravity, we've decided how we're going to attack those centers of gravity, and now we're moving quickly into the marketplace. We're using those measures of success as wallpaper, what I call wallpaper in the room. So if you're having this open and online meeting, your measures of success would be constantly being updated. If not every meeting, even within the meeting potentially. If you ever saw the movie regarding Facebook, how in the office building they had the number of users in a big digital readout in the main office. It's because that was their ultimate measure of success in the short term. But every meeting was that measure of success was wallpaper, literally wallpaper in the background. And it informed, and each meeting, each decision, each discussion. So you need to create, as you create your measures of success, you need to create a scorecard that actually is that wallpaper for each and every online and open meeting as you lead your innovation. So, a few notes about how these open and online meetings can help you at this stage of project execution, now where you're moving quickly into the marketplace. You need to meet as frequently as necessary. Some initiatives may require multiple times a day. Okay, especially early in the development, in the execution of a major initiative. Over time, that could move to once a day, could move to a couple times a week, could move to once a week, could even move to once a month, if what you're changing has truly been embedded in the culture of the organization. In this meeting, you need to review the measures of success. Where are you? Where is your progress against your task plan, your activity plan, and review that progress. You need to take input on any barriers anybody across the organization is having to progress against that plan and those measures of success. You need to take input on revising the plan if revisions are necessary. You need to take the pulse of the organization, their morale and their confidence in the execution of the initiative. You need to understand if core values are being adhered to along the way. The best way to do that is have people talk about case studies where core values are actually being role modeled. Clearly define issues and opportunities along with solutions. And repeat this process as appropriate at the appropriate frequency. The key is you're measuring, you're planning, you're acting, you're reviewing those actions, and you're revising. And that cycle has to continue over and over and over and over again with relentlessness and a sense of a sense of urgency that you're probably not used to doing in your past lives. This persistence is critical to the success, in this open and online planning and communication approach is just incredibly powerful to move a big organization, or even a small one. Okay, so we're moving quickly. We've built our business case. We're moving quickly. We're going into the marketplace, into the business, and we're leading against change. And we're measuring the success of this campaign. We're meeting frequently in an open and transparent fashion, and constantly communicating about our successes, our issues. We're knocking down barriers to success. Okay? Now, we got to make sure, though, as we wind up to attack the marketplace, we resource to win quickly. Winning quickly means shocking the system. Let's go back to our hotel example where we're trying to revolutionize the guest experience. We're going to shock the leadership. They've gotten the business case. They've signed off on the initiative to be executed in the field. We need to engage them. If we're not the leader, we need to engage the leadership of the company in leading the kickoff event to educate and inspire and to tell why this initiative is so critically important. We need to redefine processes. We need to measure those redefined processes, and we need to inspect against them. So we need to measure, we need redefine how the guest is checked in, how the rooms are clean, how food is plated, etc., etc. And we need to measure that is actually being done, and we need to also make sure the leaders of each of those departments are inspecting against that. And you may have to set up a formal inspection system, especially initially, to drive the change and review those results in your online meeting. Infrastructure is going to have to be modified. The facility, computer systems, for example, have to be updated to reflect this new revolutionary guest experience. And then the populations, all of the department people across the organization have to be retrained. They have to be coached in position. They have to be disciplined if they're not responding, and they have to be incentivized appropriately take on this new challenge. And outside agents may need new contracts or service agreements, etc. But you're getting the idea. We're going to do resource this initiative so that we can attack all of these components of the system, leadership, process, infrastructure, populations, and agents, in a very compressed timeline. And we're going to focus on the most critical of these centers of gravity. If there's 3 centers of gravity across all of these that can be focused on, and you're confident that can result in the ultimate execution of the initiative, then focus on 3. But it's 15. If it's 15, it's 15. That's why the open and online meetings are so critical, is because everyone who is a part of the center of gravity can put up resistance, can be a cause for failure, must be brought in. And to this open and online meeting, they must be they must be educated. They must report out their execution responsibilities, and if necessary, they're going to have to be coached and or disciplined. You must be relentless and persistent against any change such as this, making sure that nobody is standing in the way. And if someone in a center of gravity is standing in the way of your initiative, they've got to be taken out. Re-educated first, but ultimately taken out if the initiatives ultimately go to work. Excuse me. Finally, we have to adapt. We have to adapt, and we also have to persist. You may have seen this YouTube video before. It asked you to look at it now. I think it's very powerful because people who are ultimately incredibly successful often fail multiple times. One story that's not in here, I remember a few years ago taking my family to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and hearing about the story of William Hershey and how he was initially a manufacturer of chocolate, and he had failure after failure after failure, often relating to unrest amongst the suppliers of cocoa beans and sugar that were core ingredients of his chocolate. Ultimately, on his 4th or 5th try, after being bankrupt each time, he found out that on his last bankruptcy, his chocolate was being used to coat caramels in England, and then so he realized that he could broaden his product base, and so on the final try, he executed a new business model in which he developed chocolate, sold it, and began to vertically integrate, covering other ingredients like Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, and also vertically integrated his ownership of key ingredients. Ultimately, he failed several times, but became wildly successful, and not only a wildly successful business person, but also a very charitable person as well. So look at this video. I hope it inspires you, and what I would leave you with is this. When you're leading innovation and executing innovation initiatives, if I could summarize what your role is as the leader, it's to adapt to the changing environment as people either grab onto the initiative and begin to execute it, in which case you have to make heroes out of them. And then also people who resist and the change, and those people will have to be dealt with one-on-one in some way or another. But ultimately you have to persist through it all and continue to modify your plans, modify your tactics until you ultimately achieve your goal. I hope this series of 4 lectures on executing innovation initiatives was helpful to you. Remember, 80% of strategies in businesses fail, and they fail not because people aren't smart and they can't come up with a good strategy. It's because that they're not willing to do the hard, dirty, dogged work of executing them in the business itself. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your final case studies. And please feel free to email me with any questions or concerns you have about the Dunkin' Donuts case study final assignment. Take care.